Welcome everyone. Let's dive right in and I'm going to show you how to create this amazingly cool golf flyer. So first we're in the create new document. So if you just go up to your file and hit new, this is the window that will appear. And this particular flyer, standard flyer size is 8.5 by 11. So that's what we have chosen. And we're going to want to bleed all the way around. If this is going to be printed, you always want to have bleed settings. So we're going to go 1/8 of an inch, top, bottom, left, right. And then we want to just make sure under the advanced options that we're choosing CMYK and that the raster effects are 300 ppi. Because again, if this is going to be printed, which this one in all actuality is printed or was printed, we need it to be 300 ppi. So once you have that set in place, just go ahead and hit create. And here's our new document. And this is our starting point. Now, what we are actually creating is this flyer right here. It's for the Red Wing Golf Course, but we can put any logo in. I'm just going to show you how to get this layout and everything you need to know. So let's start. When we're starting a layout, it's generally useful to start with the objects that are at the bottom of the layer chart, so the backgrounds, and kind of build your way up. So let's start with this green background. And for that green background, I use a stock photo. So if you go to File, Place, and grab your photo. I download all of my stock photos from Adobe Stock, which I love. They are affordable and I always find what I want. So once we do File, Place, let me back up so I can show you that better. File, Place, I'm choosing my image. This is the image right here. And then once our thumbnail, or once our mouse becomes this little thumbnail image, we're going to click in the upper left hand corner, click, and we're going to drag it so it's the width of our bleed. Our bleed is the red box on the outside. Oh, so there we go. There is our background image. That is this part right here in the layout. It doesn't show a whole lot, but it's effective. So then let's go ahead and make our green transparency over top. So we're going to go over to our tool palette and we're going to click and hold until we find the rectangle tool. Usually the rectangle tool is what it defaults to, but if you don't, if you see one of these other tools over here, just click and hold so you get your options panel. We're going to choose rectangle. And again, starting at our bleed, we're going to click and hold and drag our rectangle across. Just kind of estimate it for now. We can always go back and adjust it once we get the other pieces in. But we're going to make this a transparent green over top. So I know we don't need the black border. So just go ahead and get rid of that. And then click on your fill and pick a nice CMYK green. That might be a little bit dark. There we go. Something in between. Once you get a general color set, then we're going to go to our transparency, which if you don't have your menu options set up here over on the right like I do, you can always go to Window up here at the top and go down to, I have to use this little arrow, Transparency. That will bring up the same window. So with our green rectangle selected and our transparency board up, right now you can see it's set as 100% opacity, so you can't see through it, you can't see anything that's behind it, but we want to change that. So we're going to click on this arrow and we're going to drag it down a little bit. So that's a little bit too light, I think. We want a little bit more. We want to be able to tell that it's darker, but we still want to be able to see the photo underneath. So I have it at 64. We're going to keep it there for right now. Again, we can always tweak it later. And I want to just I'm going to hold the shift key down, select my rectangle, and bring it up just a little bit. Also, because this background is bugging me that it's bigger or it's longer than my document, I'm going to go ahead and mask that out so I don't see this extra portion of it at the bottom. So I'm going to take my rectangle tool again, and I'm going to click and drag from the top of my bleed down to the bottom of my bleed. So I have this rectangle. Don't worry about what color it is, it doesn't matter. Just select your new rectangle and your background image. Go to Object, Mask, down all the way to Clipping Mask, and then Make. So that just masked out your background image. And then when you make a mask, it always brings that object to the front. And obviously we already have another design element, so we want to send this design element to the back. So we're going to go up to the menu and under Object, down to Arrange, and Send to Back. So now we have our background and we have our transparent green rectangle. Let's refer to our original layout. So this is our background image and this is our transparent box. Now let's work on the logo circle. Again, you can put any stock image in the circle that you want. I'm just going to go ahead and use the same image that I used on the original layout. So let's go back to Illustrator and let's get our image in here. So we go up to File, down to Place, and my stock image of the golf club is right here. So I select it and I hit Place. And we're going to wait for that image thumbnail to come up. There it is. And we're just going to click in the general area, click and drag the general size just so it's not humongous. Excuse me. So here's our stock image, but as you can see, it's a rectangle. And on our layout, we want it to be a circle. We want to circle in just on this main part of the ball in the club. So in order to do that, we're going to go back over to our tool palette. We're going to click and hold, and now instead of the rectangle tool, we're going to use the ellipse tool. Ellipse, circle, same thing. Click ellipse. And in order to get a circle instead of an oval, if you hold the shift key and click and drag, you will make a perfect circle. Now if you let go of the shift, that's when you can drag it into any proportion. But in order to keep it a nice even circle, you just hold the shift key down. So we're making our circle, and then we're going to drag it over by using the little dot in the middle and centering it probably right in the middle of that golf ball. And I'm using my arrow tool, my selection tool, in order to move that ellipse around. Then we, with our ellipse and circle selected or highlighted, we hold the shift key down, we select our stock image, and then we're going to create another mask. So we go up to Object, Mask, Make. And now we have our image cropped into a circle. So we're going to put that right there. Let's refer to our original layout again. Circle. It looks like it's a little bigger, so let's just for now make it bigger. But you can also see we have this circular gradient around the image, so let's work on that next. With our circular image selected, if you go down to your fill and your stroke, you can see right now that they're both filled with nothing. So what we want to do, because we want to put a stroke on this, we want to select our stroke, and then instead of a color, we want to go to our gradient palette, which if it's not over here in your shortcut palette, then you can go to Window and Gradient, and it pulls up the gradient window. And just by default, let's select the gradient default, which is white to black, for our stroke. And as you can see, if I click off this, you can barely see, whoops, you can barely see that stroke because it defaults to 1 point, which is really small. So we're going to select that again. We're going to go to our stroke palette and we're going to bump that up. We're just going to keep going until it's approximately 1/8 of an inch or so, maybe even between 1/8 and 1/4, which let's just go a little bit more. So on my screen right now, that's 13 points. And we want to adjust this gradient because you can see right now it's going from white to black. But if you look at my layout, it's going more from green to a little spectrum, like a little speck of light, and then to a darker gray. So let's recreate this in Illustrator. We have our stroke selected. You can see over here on the toolbar that we have our stroke in front. So then we have a gradient selected, but let's go to the gradient palette because we want to fine tune that. So in order to fine tune this, the left hand side, which is right here, the white, we're going to double click so it brings up our color palette, which is set to grayscale. That's fine. We're going to slide this little bar till it gets to be a nice medium gray. Perfect. And we're going to click back to the palette. We're going to click the right hand side. I don't want 100% black because you can see that's really a harsh contrast to the green. I'm just going to drop it down so that it's not totally black, like 95. We could even go a little bit more, 90. Perfect. So then you can see when we click off, it's going from a light gray over here to a dark gray. But how do we get that little shine of light right here in the middle? I will show you. So let's select our circle again. We have our stroke gradient right here. We're going to adjust it. What we want to do is we're going to click right in the middle of this spectrum bar so that we create a third tab right in the middle. We're going to double click on that, and then we're going to bump this down, way down, so it's almost white. So it's like, I don't know, you could go anywhere from 10 to 20%. I'm going to keep it at 18. And then the last and final trick, as you can see, if we look at this with nothing clicked, it's still like it goes evenly from light gray to white to dark gray. And we want to make that a really thin piece of white in the middle. So in order to adjust that, let's click on our circle again. We have our stroke selected, and we have our middle tab, which is really light. So then we want to slide these two little diamonds up on top. We're going to slide in closer and closer. So now I could even go a little bit more in. So now we have this nice little flare of light right in the middle because we adjusted the gradient to not be quite so even. And it gives it that effect of a reflection or a glare on your gradient, which is nice. Okay, now we are ready to go on to the green circle and the text inside here. So if we go back to our original layout, we're going to be working on this transparent green circle and the text inside of the circle. To get a transparent circle, we need to go back to our ellipse tool over in our tool palette, select that, and if you hold your Shift and Alt and click in the middle of that golf ball, you'll get an ellipse that starts in the middle. And we're just going to eyeball this. It doesn't have to be technical. We want a little bit of the club to show, so we won't go quite that big. And then we're going to get rid of that stroke. We don't want a stroke. We want to go to our fill, and instead of just picking a green color, we're actually going to mimic this green color that we used on our background. So in order to do that, with our circle selected, we're going to go over to our toolbox and select the eyedropper tool. And then we're going to just hover our eyedropper tool over the green background and click. And then it soaks up, well, like I say, it sucks up the color wherever you clicked, and it fills whatever you have selected. So now we have a nice green transparent circle that matches our background, but you can tell it's transparent because you can see the photo behind it. And now if we go back to our original, we have some white text to add over the top, charity golf tournament. So let's work on that. We're going to select our text tool, and we're going to just click for the first word and type it out, and then use our selection tool or selection arrow, holding the shift key, click and drag that right hand corner till it's approximately the size you want. And then we're going to use white because white is going to stand out better than black will. So we're going to go over to our color palette and select white, and then we're going to pick our font. And I'm not going to be too picky on fonts for this tutorial because A, I don't remember the exact fonts that I used on the original, and B, that is part of the creativity of this project. So I kind of want I want different fonts. So for this first font, I'm gonna just try to pick something that's kind of scripty. So let's do, this is a nice script font, charity. And then we want the word golf underneath, so we're going to go back to our text tool and click. And just for a difference in typefaces, to add some creativity, we're going to do all caps. So GOLF. Again, with our selection tool, click and drag so it's big. But you can see that that looks ridiculous because it's a scripty font and it's all caps. So I am going to choose something kind of big and blocky for the word golf. So we're going to go to fonts, and let's, this is just the first big blocky font that I came across, which is HN. And let's hold our shift key and drag that corner and resize it a little bit. And we're going to make it white, so let's go to our tool palette, white. And I love how the Y just kind of fits in that open space between the L and the F. So we're going to leave that for now. And then we need the word tournament underneath. So let's go back to our text tool. And, I clicked on the circle, don't want to do that. Just click somewhere inside the circle. And again, personally, I feel like the word tournament should be in caps, so I'm going to hold my cap locks down and type the word tournament. Use my selection, shift, click and drag, so it's about the same width but still fits in the circle. And then let's go ahead and pick another font and change that color to white. Our character palette is where we find fonts. And I think it shouldn't be quite that heavy. It should be a little bit lighter, but still contrasting. So maybe something serif, like Book Antiqua. Ooh, I like that. Let's go with that. So we're going to position that under golf. We're going to slide golf up just a little bit, because I'm going to use my magnifying glass and zoom in here a little bit. We also want to highlight the word tournament with some lines. So if we go to our tool palette, you'll see right next to the text tool is the line segment tool. So if we select that and we click and hold the shift key starting where we want our line to start, click, shift, drag, we get a line. But you can see default is no fill, no stroke, so we need to select our stroke and make that white. And then we can do the same thing. But in order to get these two lines the exact same width, here's a trick. If you use your selection tool and have your stroke selected, click on your stroke and hold Shift, Alt, Control, you can see that our arrow turned into a plus sign, meaning it's going to duplicate this line. So with all of those three, Shift, Alt, Control, and the line selected, we're going to click and drag down. Oh, we're going to click and drag down. There we go. So let me do that again. Select your line, Shift, Control, Alt, and drag. And you can see it's making a duplicate line. That way you know that the line is exactly the same length, and if you hold the Shift key down, it keeps it in line. So now we have our charity golf tournament text. Let's refer back to our original. Charity golf tournament. And then we have a little tagline down at the bottom. Benefiting the Red Wing Area Food Shelf. Let's go in and add that. We're going to zoom in a little bit because the text is starting to get small. We're going to use our text tool, click underneath tournament, and just start typing. So there's our text, and if we use our arrow tools and select it, you can see the default is left justified, and I think we need this centered. So up at in our top toolbar, you'll see your justification settings are up here, and you want to choose align center and then bring it in, and I think we need that to be white as well. So we're going to go to our color palette, select our fill, and change that to white. And I think we could go a little bit bigger. Right now, if you look up here, you can see your text is 12 point. If we could get up to 14 point, that would be perfect. And 14 point fits just right in there. So our circle is done. Let's look and see what's next. Okay, let's go ahead and start building this right side to the right of the circle. The logo, and then some information about the food shelf. In order to place the logo, first I have my logo here already, so I'm going to click and drag and select that entire logo. I'm going to copy, go back to my layout, and I'm going to paste. And as you can see, I'm just going to resize it here, and if I leave it like it is, it doesn't really stand out against the green because there's green in the logo and there's this small black text underneath. So in order to get this logo to pop, I'm going to put a white background around it. So I'm going to choose my rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag approximately where I want my white rectangle. You can always adjust it. And then since it's covering up my logo, I don't want that. I'm going to select, or keep my rectangle selected. I'm going to select my transparent box behind it, and I'm going to select the background image all by holding the Shift key, because those are the objects I want to move to the back. And then I go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. So those three objects that I have selected just moved to the back of the layout, so that my logo is on top and shows through. So now with the white rectangle behind it, my logo pops a lot more on the layout. And it all depends on what your logo looks like. If you have a one color white logo, obviously you don't need a white box around it. That is just part of your artist intuition, is to figuring out the best way to place that logo in the upper right hand corner. So now if we look at the original, we have this informational text, but the trick to this is that you can see A, we have two different sizes and colors, and then B, it's kind of conforms to the shape of the circle, which is not hard. It's a super easy trick, and I'm going to show you how to do it right now. First, we just want to get our text in there. So Let's select the text tool, and because we have more of paragraph portion text, not just one line of text, we want to make a paragraph box, and that's really easy to do. Instead of just clicking and then pasting or typing, we're going to click approximately where our type is going to start, click and drag out a box. So this is going to be the size of your paragraph. So click and drag and then just release, and then you can see your typing cursor starts at the top. And because this is a paragraph, we want to go back and make sure that it's left justified instead of centered. So up to the top toolbar and hit the left align. Now we can start typing, and I'm just going to type some placeholder text. So this is our header text, and then we have a little bit smaller paragraph text underneath. This is just for demonstration purposes, so you would either want to copy and paste the text that was supplied to you for the layout, or you would just go ahead and continually type in what you want. Probably get rid of some of these. Okay, so this top text is going to be larger and darker. So let's do, we'll keep Book Antiqua, but let's pop it up to 16 points. And then our color, instead of straight black, we're doing just a little bit of percentage. So let's do 90%. And then this bottom part is kind of the important text. We want this to really be readable, so we're going to do white, and we're going to keep that at 14. So the header text is 16 point and the paragraph text is 14. And I see it's a little bit long here, so let's just delete a little bit of this last part. So that is how you do the different types of text: larger text size, smaller text size. Now let's work on getting this text to wrap around the circle. All you have to do with your selection tool, select your text box, and then you're going to go 2 tools down to the pen tool, and you're going to click and hold on the pen tool, and you want to select the pen that has the plus sign, because we're going to add some anchor points. So with the plus sign tool selected, we're going to go back over to our text box, and we're just going to randomly click and add some anchor points on our text box. You can see I'm adding them in here. Now that we have them added, we can go back to our direct selection tool, which is the white arrow, and we can click and drag individually these points that we just added. So I am going to select the top point. I'm going to hold my shift key down so that I keep everything aligned, and I'm going to drag it over a little bit closer to the circle. This one, I'm going to click, keep my shift key down, and drag it a little bit to the right. Click, drag, click, drag, and we're just going to keep dragging these points around so that they line up with the circle and we get a line. And then if you get these jump spaces in between here, it's no problem. We're going to go back to our text tool. We're going to go right to the beginning of that text. We're going to backspace so that it removes the extra spaces. So now we have this nicely formed text that goes around our circle. And just because this is so tight, and it depends on how much text you actually end up putting in here. You can always adjust this green background either more or less depending on how much text you have in there. So just do it so it visually aligns. And I want the same amount of space between the darker green and the end of the text as I have between the logo box and the top of the rectangle. So I'm even going to pull this up a little bit more so that that gap at the top of the logo is equal to the gap between the bottom of the rectangle and the text. Okay, now we are going to move on to if we look back at our original, we're going to start this gray section right here, which this should be super simple. So back to our document in Illustrator, we're going to go to our rectangle tool to draw our background. We're just going to start over at the bleed, click and drag, and then we don't want it green, so let's change the color. We'll go back to just a little bit off of black, a real dark gray. Let's do 95%. And we want that, let's see, we want that to go behind the circle. So we're going to select our gray box and our background and go up to Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. And that'll put it behind the circle. Then we have a couple boxes of text, a title, and so let's draw our lighter gray boxes while we're at it. The rectangle tool, and then we just change that color to slightly lighter. Ooh, that's too light. Let's go 85. Actually, let's go 90. There, just enough to have some contrast. And then if we want to duplicate this box to make our second rectangle, we can select it, hold our Shift, Alt, and Control, and slide it over. And then we can just pull it. So there's our two boxes. Let's put our title up above here, or the larger text. With our text tool, you can click. And I'm just going to put filler text. Obviously, you can put your own text. We'll make it white. And then we'll hold the Shift key and drag it so it's even with the end of our boxes. And then let's center. I see I have more room over here on the left than I do on the right. So let's select all three objects by holding the Shift key down. And then we can kind of nudge it with the arrow. If you use the arrow on your keyboard, you can nudge things over in small increments. So that's looking better. It's a little more centered. And then I think we just have to fill our boxes with text. So let's do that. We can click and drag and make a text rectangle. And then we just, let's see, we're just going to fill that. And Control A selects all my text, and then I'm going to align it center, and I'm going to change the color. So now we have that, and I'm going to show you how to do the price. Let's just copy this text and put it over on the side. Okay, so if we go back to our original, I'm going to show you how to make this the price with the small dollar sign and the small zeros. It's not hard. So we start with our text tool and just do a single click, and we do dollar sign and then 45 and then 0. So right now it looks like $4,500. But let's make it white. If we select with our text tool and just highlight the dollar sign and then go to our character palette, if you look down here, you'll see an A and and then a small a with an arrow. It says set the baseline shift. So we're going to shift the baseline just for the $ and the zeros. So we're going to just keep clicking it up, and then we're also going to bring the text size down. It's at 85 right now, so let's just down arrow. Yep. So we have a smaller $, and we're a little bit high on the baseline, so let's bring that back down. There we go. Perfect. So now we can do the same thing with the zeros by highlighting, and then eyedropper tool, and then I use the eyedropper tool on the $, and it picks up all the characteristics of whatever you click on, so now we know they're both the same. And we have a nice $45 price that really stands out. So just kind of a fancier way, more professional way to do a price. Then we're going to use our line segment tool, and we're going to shift and drag a line and fill this, or use white for the stroke. And then our stroke palette is where we can adjust the weight of that line. So I think I want it just a little bit thicker than 1 point. So let's go 3 points. Now we have our line spacer there. And then to add our text over here on the right, the text tool, click in the corner, drag, and then I'm just going to copy and paste our placeholder text, and let's left align that because I think it looks better, and maybe even drop down the size. Obviously this will all depend on what you actually put in here. So here's our layout so far. Hasn't been hard, I hope. We still have our entry form at the bottom to do. It's pretty small. A lot of information packed in there, but that's okay. So let's go back. So the bottom of the flyer is all white. So there's 2 ways we can do this. We can take our rectangle tool, draw a white box that's the size of our bleed, and then with our white box selected, and we're going to pick up this background image and send those both to the back by using the arrange tool. So that's one way we can do it. Otherwise, I'm going to just delete this box. We can also adjust our mask that we have on our background image. So our background image is included in that mask, and we're going to click on the original path. There we go. And if I click on that and I hit the shift, or hold the shift key down, slide my mask up, now we have a white background because we masked out the image behind it. So either way works. Okay, let's start creating the registration form at the bottom. If we look at the original, starting from the bottom of the layout up would probably be our dashed box. Just a dashed line just to represent that you can cut it out or tear it off. So if we go to Illustrator, we're going to use our rectangle tool again, and we're going to start in the corner where we want it, click and drag to the size, and we want, let's make it a red stroke just so it sticks out a little bit more. So the best CMYK red to use is 0% cyan, 100% magenta, 100% yellow, and 0 black. Gives us a nice bright red. And then in order to make it stroked, we have to go to our stroke palette, and this little box in the middle of your stroke palette, dash line. So if we look at this, let's zoom in a little bit. You can see that it defaults to 12-point dash and 12-point space, but we can adjust that. So we're going to select our stroke, go back to our stroke palette, and then these sequence of boxes underneath the dashed line is where you can adjust the dash and the gap. So let's reduce each of them to about half the size, so 6-point dash, 6-point gap. And there we get a nice little bit smaller dashed line. And I think we're going to need a little bit more room for this registration form, so we're going to tighten up our layout up here. I'm just going to click and drag and select everything that I want to move, and we're just going to hold the shift key while we drag everything up. And let's make this smaller there. And we're going to move adjust our mask. Move that up. And then move this, which makes it really tight for the circle. Let's see if we can give ourselves a little bit more space. Again, I'm going to click and drag so I select everything in the circle. And holding the shift key down, then I can unselect this background because I don't want to move that. And using my arrows to nudge, I'm going to nudge this circle up. Perfect. We have enough room here. We have enough room between the circle and the logo. And you know, as long as I have this whole circle piece selected, I'm going to go ahead and group all of those objects together. So we're going to go up to Object and down to Group, or you can use the Control-G command. And now, if I click off of here and I click back on, it selects it all as one object, so it's much easier to move around instead of having to select all the separate pieces. So let's make sure, I might have to adjust our text over here just a little bit, which is fine. We can just select those anchor points, move them in a little bit closer if we need to. And this one maybe a little bit further away. Perfect. Looking good, and now we have more room for our registration form, so I'm going to select that dotted line, and I'm just going to drag it up. Looks good. Let's see what's next. Okay, let's make this title team registration form. Goes at the top here. We're going to use our rectangle, draw, and we don't want a dashed line anymore, so we're going to get rid of that. We're going to go back to our fill, and I think just to keep consistency, let's use our eyedropper and pick up the same green that we drew for our overlay here. But then now, instead of making it having it transparent, we want it to be solid. So let's go to our transparency window, and where it's at 64 right now, just bump it up to 100, and there we have our solid green. And now that I look, we moved this gray part up a little bit, which doesn't give us a whole lot of space between our transparent rectangle and our background image. So let's go ahead and select our transparency, and let's bring that up just a little bit so that there's a difference in color here, just a little visual stimulation between there. And we're going to zoom in a little bit, focus on this bottom part. We have our box. Let's create our title over top, text tool, and you can click right on the green box, and it brings our typing cursor there. We're going to type team registration. Go ahead and use your arrow to move that down, your shift key to get it centered in there, and I think we're going to go with white again, so that it stands out. Oh, and you know what? See how this little blue square is down here? That means the square represents my baseline. So I think my baseline is still way up because of when we did our pricing. So with this new text selected, let's go to our character palette and down to our baseline shift, which is right here, and put that back at 0. So now our text is aligned with the baseline like we want it to be. Okay, now let's check back. So now we have information here on the form, and I will show you how to create that, and then also this custom form over here. So let's start with the golfer names. So to do text and align, we're just going to do golfer number 1, colon, and then continue down with our text. And in my experience, it's easier to add the lines, oops, number 4, after you have all your text. So depending again how you're gonna exactly set this form up, you might have more text here or less text, but I just want you to get the overall lesson here. Now see, our golfer text is really close together, and I think we're going to need a little bit more space because we want people to be able to write on the line. So with your text selected, if you want to add space in between your text, go over to your character palette, and then we adjust right here is the leading. It's called leading in between lines. So we're just going to click the up arrow and space that text out a little bit. That looks good. So then once we get the rest of our information, name, address, that sort of thing, anything custom to this form, let's add our lines. So we're going to use our line segment tool, and we're going to line our crosshair up with that bottom semicolon. Click, hold your shift key, and drag. And we have our line segment. Now we just have to make it black. Choose black. So we have our line, and then we're just going to duplicate that down. So select your line, hold your shift, control, alt, duplicate it, line it up with that bottom colon, and then if you do, now that we have duplicated it once, you can repeat that duplication by just hitting Control or Apple D. So we have our second line selected. Let's hit Control D. There popped another one, and Control D. So excuse me, that's a quick shortcut for spacing out those lines so they're exact. And then over here on the right hand side, I seem to remember, yep, we grayed out the background just to kind of separate it from the information, the payment info from the registration info. So let's go ahead and add that gray box with our rectangle tool. We're going to stay just inside the dotted line and remove the stroke. And for the fill, we start with black, and then we just slide this down until we get a nice light color. It doesn't have to be dark by any means. I have it at about 34%. Let's go with that. So then to make the payment info and check boxes, it's easy. Use your text tool and just click once. And we'll type in all caps, payment info. And I think that's a little bit too big. That's 14 point, and there's a lot of info we had to cram on here. So let's drop that down to 12. And then for our options, which are golf team or whole sponsorship, you can duplicate this again. So hold your Control and your Alt and slide it down, and then you just have to retype it. Team, we don't want all caps. Registration, and then we can just add some spaces here. Oops. And then whole sponsorship. So we have our two options. Let's make those checkbox options. With our rectangle tool, we're going to try to make a square, so hold your shift key down when you start to drag, and you get a box, and we just have to make that an outline instead of filled. Then you can get that lined up however you would like next to your option. And then again, to duplicate that same box, click Shift, Control, Alt, and just slide it over next to the second option. So using that same technique, you can, put in whatever payment info options you need at the bottom. I'll just have it in the template that I offer. If you want to download it, I'll fill the rest of that out with just X's, and it'll all be editable so you can rearrange it. So that is side 1. It wasn't so bad, was it? And now we go to side 2, which is mainly just text, but I'll walk you through it. Alright, we are moving on to page 2, or the second side of this flyer. So let's use our magnifying glass. We're going to back out just a little bit here so we can see our whole entire layout. And what we want to do, or the easiest way to do this, to make a second artboard or a second page, you're going to go to your artboard tool, which is down here toward the bottom. And once you have that selected, you can see it has automatically selected our first artboard. And in order to duplicate that, it's just like duplicating an object. So you're going to click on your artboard, Shift Control Alt or Shift Apple Alt, and then just slide it over. And boom, we have 2 artboards. Now I'm going to show you one other thing, because you can see when we duplicate our artboard, we can get rid of this little message up here. When we duplicated our artboard, it duplicated all of the art on top, which could be helpful, might not be helpful in your case. There's another way to do it, so I'm going to just Control Z and undo that. If you don't want all of your artwork to copy over onto your second artboard, we just do a Control or Command A to select everything, and then we can lock it down by going to Object Lock. All artwork above. There's different options here. We're going to lock our selection. So now if we go to our artboard tool, click on our artboard, Shift Control Alt and slide it over, it only copies over the artboard and your artwork stays where it's at. It doesn't duplicate the artwork if it's locked. So you can do it either way depending on if it's helpful or not helpful. So let's look at our layout again. So we're carrying through this background from the front just to give it a little bit of consistency. So let's do that first, and we can just duplicate. We're going to select, we got to unlock, Object, Unlock Everything. We're going to select our background image and our transparent box, and then we're going to duplicate that over. So you can do that by either doing a copy, Control C, and a paste, Control V, and it will duplicate it. And then we have a gray box with the pricing, I believe, helps support the community, and then the whole sponsorship. So let's do both of those, and we can copy and paste our gray box over here, and we can copy and paste our title text, and we'll just type in whole sponsorship, and then use our arrow and shift and get that up a little bit higher. And then let's not forget our little tagline up here. We're going to click just above, help support the community. Make that a little bit bigger. And I think that if we look back here, it's a darker green text over the lighter green background. So, we have it a little bit different here. Let's move our transparent box down. There. So we're going to use our eyedropper tool again, and we're going to suck up this transparent green, so that gives us transparent text at the top. And here's another kind of fun, useful tip. Now, I want both of these lines of text to be centered with each other, and if I can do it, I can eyeball it, but that's not always a great idea. So we can align 2 objects or 2 lines of text. The computer or Illustrator will automatically align or center it for you if you select both lines. And then up here, if you see, you have a little shortcut here that says Align panel, and it brings up all the different align options. Now we want to center these left to right, so we're going to click on this horizontal align center, and then it automatically centers these two lines of text. Let's make sure. I see that this line of text is still left justified because the anchor is over here on the left. So let's center that. And just for fun, I'm going to put it way off to the side so you can see this. So we select our first line of type, our second line of type. Let's get the align panel up, and then align left to right there. So then you can see it jumped over. Let's do it again just so you can see. I have both lines of text selected, and we're going to hit the align, and then align, horizontal align center. There we go. And then we're going to move both pieces of type over so it's centered. Okay, then we want to do our pricing again. So don't make more work for yourself. Don't start it from scratch. Let's pick it up from where we already created it on the first page. So select the price, the text, and the line, and do a copy and a paste. And then we just move it here. And then we just fix the numbers. 110. Slide that over. And then we would, retype our new copy in there. Move that down just a little bit. Alright, just a little bit left. We need our informational square. So let's go back, and we're going to use our rectangle tool. We're going to draw our square. You can make this any size, obviously, to meet whatever text you're going to put in here. And we're going to use our eyedropper tool so we stay consistent with our green color, and we're going to pick up that transparent green, but this we want to be solid. So let's go to our transparency panel and put it to 100%. There we have our solid green, and then we just need our title, so we can duplicate, copy and paste our title, and do our title text. I'm going to insert placeholder text. There we go. And then for our paragraph text, when we want to do paragraphs, we use our text tool, but we click and drag so that our text will automatically fill that entire box. And then I'm going to, again, just so I don't have to type everything, I'm just going to insert placeholder text. There we go. So to edit this text all at once, I'm going to do a Control A and select it all because I want to left justify it. And I also want to change it to white. And then to me that looks like a little bit too much spacing. So I'm going to go to my leading in my character palette, and I'm going to reduce the amount. Maybe add returns in the paragraphs by just clicking at the end of the paragraph and hitting enter. So look at that, guys. We just created a 2-page flyer. I hope that you were successful and that following my instructions made it a little bit easy, and that you have a nice piece now that you can either use in your portfolio or perhaps use it for a customer. If you're interested, again, in not necessarily learning how to do it, or if you stumbled through it, that's fine. I also will link up the download so you can download this as a template and put your own, it'll basically look like this when you open it, and then you just highlight the text that you want to change and put your own pricing in. You can switch it around however you want. Just kind of use it as a basis, a template, a starting point. So yeah, I hope this was fun, and again, in the comments, let me know if this was useful to you, if you'd like to do more of these, because I think there was so much more lesson, so many more tools and stuff that we used just going through this. So enjoy, give me some feedback, and until next week, have a great one.